Good morning, Madam Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Mia Marmot-Lee, Madam Deputy Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, Leader of the Opposition, former Prime Minister Mr. Frandell Stewart, members of the clergy, specially invited guests, my family members, and ladies and gentlemen. First, let me formally introduce myself. I am Catherine Amanda Walters, also known to everyone close to my dad as Arni's last child. I'm graciously known as Beauty, a name given to me by my father. For about 10 years of my life, many older persons in my grandmother's community never actually knew my name. My father would often say, "This is my last girl." And my grandmother would say, "This is Arnie's last child." I became so accustomed to the title that when my elders asked, I would excitedly say, "I'm Arnie's last daughter." Years later, I would say, "My name is Amanda." But even into adulthood, people still refer to me as Arnie's last child. I have been given the esteemed pleasure of taking you down a trip down memory lane to pay tribute to my dad. Through a journey of laughter, food, music, education, and family. Anyone who truly knew my dad would know that he was a foodie. He loved trying different foods and could tell you where every cook shop, kiosk, restaurant, deli, bread shop was in Barbados and in London. He knew where to find the best deals on what he called cooked food, where to get the best wings, fish cakes, bakes, and the freshest breads and pastries. His passion for food passed down to all three of his children in some way. For me, I took his vast knowledge of breads, cakes, and pastries and decided to become a pastry chef. Initially, my father was not too crazy about that idea. He, he initially said I was throwing away my predestined career given to me by my grandfather as a social worker down the canal. But after his initial rant with me, he fully supported my dreams. He would always say, "I can't force any of you in the path that I choose. You have to live your life, not me." He was more than happy to then become my food critic, offering feedback on every new dish I tried and every cake I baked. When I started my small business, he wrote out everything I needed to be successful, where I went wrong, how I could improve, and how to perfect my recipes. Mind you, his food reference was the Food Network. But I didn't mind. He was the Iron Chef in my eyes. We spent countless hours in the kitchen listening to music from his era. Steel Pan, John Holt, Gregory Isaac, Sugar Minott, and watching old stand-up comedies as well as British comedy to pass the time and to laugh. As serious as most people know my dad to be, he loved to laugh, or as Bajans would say, skin he teeth. He introduced me to stand-up comedy and made me fall in love with public speaking and the art of adding humor to make people smile and remember you long after you left the room. That was my dad, a memorable, tall, humble gentleman who loved his family, human resource management, the cane industry, teaching and advocating for employee rights and labor laws. He had a passion for fairness, whether a person was working as a janitor or the president of a company. He had a mind like an elephant, often recalling laws that were passed, particularly the SHOP Act and the Employee Rights Act. My dad loved helping others. He often reminded us that he was the eldest of four and that from the time he got his driver's license, he was taking his mother to and from work and helping care for his three younger siblings. He proudly shared stories of growing up in St. Patrick's and Waldron, where he was remembered by his classmates. And he remembered all of his classmates' names, where they graduated from, and what they later became in their careers. As I said, my dad had a mind like an elephant. He was a proud St. Patrick's man, and everyone in the neighborhood knew and respected him. We couldn't step into a shop or a supermarket without someone saying to us, "Mr. Walters, how are you? You remember me?" And it wasn't just in St. Patrick's. Wherever I went with my father, people would always recognize him. They would remind him that he taught them a course, helped them get a job, gave them advice, or supported their small business. I used to tell him all the time how proud I was of him, how many thousands of lives he touched, and the impact he made. And he would humbly brush it off by saying, I was called to serve. I was a civil servant for 40 years, and I regret nothing. My dad loved his family and his friends deeply. He adored his siblings, his parents, nieces, nephews, cousins, and his grandchildren. I was always willing to lend a hand, answer questions, and offer guidance. His skills of being a father were explored further when he became a grandfather. But before my daughter was born, my god sister Rishante was a stepping stone that would then later lead to my daughter Zane. He learned the art of having tea parties. He broadened his imagination as the characters in her tea parties would often change. And every time it would come by, they would be gladly sitting in the living room in their own little space having a grand time. He often taught Rishante how to cook something he called broth, which was filled with cabbage, potatoes, and anything green he could find in the fridge. And she would always eat it with pleasure. They played dominoes, watched cricket, and anything he did became golden in her eyes. Dad was truly loved. He then became my daughter's protector. He was not only her dad, but her place of experiment and excitement. The two of them would sit for hours and laugh, play puzzles, and color. She was the laughter my father needed in his last years of his life. He often thanked me for having her, after calling her Amanda baby if she ever gave him a hint of trouble. That was his heart. When she was born, I took a back seat, as he was now in charge of Zane. I often used to say, you are now getting to do all of the things that you weren't able to do with me. And he said, yes, because I now have time. When you were young, I was doing my best to support you and your siblings. This is now a different level of support. And I have a duty to protect all of my children, and I will do so to my last breath. And he did do it. He often told me the story of how he met my mother and how much a force to be reckoned with she is, and how my grandfather Gordon was actually the one to seal the deal. He told me about leaving phone messages for her at the bank, showing up to her workplace just to see her, even if he had nothing to do with his account. He was very persistent. And my grandfather always used to say that. He was really persistent. He would always say, when I met your mom, it was love at first sight. But if she had met me when she was younger, she wouldn't have given me a first or second look. I was hard, lanky, and not as handsome as I am now. My parents' relationship blossomed from her telling him, don't come back, every Sunday, to them eventually walking down the aisle. And the rest, as they say, is history. My dad, as I became a young lady, started to give me dating advice. He'd often say, your mom will tell you her version. I will tell you mine. Pick sense for nonsense and carry on your way. But be cautious, because I don't have to look in their face every day. You do. Dad loved all of his children equally. My sister and I always used to be quarreling about which one of us was his favorite. And he would often say, I can't choose. If each of you is unique, there is no favorite. My sister was his sounding board, his doctor, and his medical advisor. I was his chef, nutritionist, and caretaker. And I took my job very seriously. My brother was his chief engineer, mechanic, and his twin. My brother is all of my dad, exemplified. He's humble, he's brilliant, and talented, just like Daddy. And although my dad fought a battle he could not win with prostate cancer, we are forever grateful for the memories that he gave to us, the love and the time that he poured into all of us. There is no perfect way to say thank you, Dad. All I can do is to help others know who you were. My solace in chaotic times, my sounding board when I needed to rant, and I was always ranting. My voice of reason when I flew off the handle, the greatest chef known to man, my hero and my gentle giant. Most of all, you are my daddy. Dad, you did well. I am so proud of you and I love you. Rest well now, kind sir. Thank you very much.